Well, welcome everyone to the Inner Power Podcast. I'm Chris Cirak, and I have a super special guest for you today. My friend Leah here is probably known to you already, but we're really honored to have her here in person. And we're going to talk about lots of things related to meditation and the M word, as we all, we're familiar with the topic, but as I go and travel, people have certain struggles with it. So we're going to tune into that and see what we can do to help everyone come out of the resistance to the meditation and really tune into our inner selves and pull from there and not spend so much time chasing outcomes. Mm-hmm. So welcome, Leah.
Thank you. By the way, when you say your name, does anyone ever confuse it for Chris Rock?
Yes. They used to call me, my gym teacher in high school called me The Rock.
Yeah, you're like the rock of meditation.
Ooh, I like that. Yes. That's awesome. There's also Puff Daddy who has the Cirak vodka. And I worked in my professional career, I worked on the ad campaign for that. And I think the company paid like $2 million to come up with that name. And I was born with it. But anyway, so that's a little background.
Well, it's good to be here. It's been a while since we've seen each other. If you're not familiar with me, I'm a meditation teacher, and I live here in Bali as well. And I've been teaching for over a decade now. I teach at the Yoga Barn, which is a big studio here in Bali. And the last 5 years, I've been the meditation coach and the voice on the Balance app, which has been a really awesome project to share meditation with millions of people around the world that wouldn't otherwise have access to it.
Yeah. Awesome. And I definitely want to come back to the app thing, because that is a great way to reach people. But going back to the meditation teacher training that you run once a year. Yeah. So I was part of that, and I had a blast. I learned so much. It helped me expand from kind of my core practice into really understanding the full breadth of the space. And I remember I was on your mailing list, and I remember seeing this. I'm like, why aren't there more of these? This is something that really, should be out there some more. People, spreading the word and the techniques and the practice. So what prompted the idea, and kind of how did you put it together?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. I want to answer that first. I just want to say I acknowledge you because you were already teaching meditation when you came to the teacher training for a number of years, in fact. And so I just appreciated that, you're like, I want to like explore and learn other varieties of meditation. And so I really appreciated that, because I think oftentimes we get into these silos where we believe very evangelically that there's one way to approach something. And that ties into your question about why isn't there that many meditation teacher trainings out there. And there's definitely, you can find people who are especially following more of the maybe mindfulness or Buddhist pathways. There's been a long-standing traditions there and schools of thought and pathways for people to follow. But, you're learning one very particular approach and one very particular pathway, so to speak. And then there's so many others out there, like TM, for example, Transcendental Meditation, or the Vedic meditation movement. There's just so many different paths where they tend to follow one specific technique or one specific path, and as a sort of blanket approach for everyone. And I was really fortunate early on in my journey of learning meditation to come across a teacher who's a friend of mine, and I would even say a mentor over the years, a man named Charlie Knowles. And very early on, over a decade ago, I partnered with him on creating something in Los Angeles, a meditation event where I brought him in as the teacher, and I was producing the event and bringing all the people and introducing him. And then he would go on to share multiple styles of meditation in one morning, in 1 hour. We do energizing Kundalini style breathwork practices to really add the prana and life force energy, and people will get super alert and awake from that. And then we'd move into a one-pointed concentration practice, following the breath, a breath awareness practice. And we'd do that for 20 minutes and help build focus and concentration and present moment awareness. And then we'd move from that to this mantra-based practice where it's all about letting go and all about surrender. And after that, we'd go into loving kindness, and we'd really see people leave with their hearts so open and expanded and having just tried out multiple styles all at once. It was sort of this kind of, outside of the box, maybe a bit taboo, because there's so many people who think like, oh, you just stick with one, you don't do a whole bunch of things. But what was so beautiful about that experience is it showed me that not only can you pair different meditations with one another and it can enhance the experience, but it's not a one size fits all. Some people gravitated towards one particular practice while really struggled with the other ones. And it's not to say that they shouldn't do the other ones, but to say that certain mind types of people are going to gravitate towards certain practices and might even find certain practices more helpful for them because maybe they struggle with present moment awareness. And so it's really easy for them to do a mantra practice and just blast off into the ethers, but really hard to stay present in this moment. And some other people have the opposite issue. They can be really present, but have a hard time letting go and surrender. So this started to get my wheels turning, talking with Charlie and understanding like, wow, I don't necessarily want to just be excelling in one area. It's sort of like going to the gym and just doing upper body, just doing bicep curls or just doing bench press. And after time, you'd get really, really good at that, but you'd look a little funny,
Big guys with those tiny legs.
Tiny little legs, like a caricature.
A cartoon.
Yeah, like a cartoon character. Or like really big legs and like a scrawny upper body. We know we wouldn't do that. We need a full, well-rounded approach for our body. Mm-hmm. Why would we think that our minds and sort of even from a spiritual perspective that we'd be any different when it comes to meditation? And so that made me really curious to understand what are the different benefits and consequences, perhaps, of doing one approach for a very long period of time, and when is it appropriate or useful, not even appropriate, useful and helpful to do one technique versus another. And then I found a teacher who completely blew my mind and shared with me that beyond any of the prescribed meditation techniques that are out there that have been passed down for, who knows, thousands of years even, people in the modern day world can create their own meditations, because a meditation technique is just simply you bring your attention to something and you become fully immersed in that to some degree. Either you stay present with it or it fades away, as in a mantra or sound. And it's the gateway into the meditation. Like the meditation isn't the concentration on it. The meditation is the spontaneous state that arises, as you know.
Exactly. And that's what the word I often use is a state. It's not the separate activity.
Yeah.
But it's the state that we bring to our activities. And the senses really pull us into that. So just noticing detail, the focus, doing things like cooking and even the laundry can be very meditative.
And I think this conversation is not being talked about often. And it might even be, like I said, a little taboo to bring up. And people get their feathers pretty ruffled when you say, well, maybe there's other ways to do it. And they're like, no, this is the best way. And we see that with religions and all. It's out there, We get really excited about one approach because it works for us. And we're like, absolutely, it must work for everyone. And the thing is, it doesn't. Nothing ever does. There's no one right way to dress. There's no one right way to eat or, express yourself. And as I say, meditation is like your personal relationship to life. And so I think allowing people to be the guide to help others explore what works for them, and then knowing a breadth of different tools and being able to guide them to finding their own is really the art. Yeah. And so, you know, my friend Charlie has a training that he does online, and I had a lot of people coming up to me over the years asking me, when's my meditation teacher training? When's my meditation teacher training? And just as a response to the universe basically saying, this is being asked of you, I put one together, and it's in person in Bali. And I do it once a year at the Yoga Barn or here in Bali. And it's a really beautiful journey. And I just love seeing people being able to go out right away and then just share it with their communities, because I feel like the world needs more meditation teachers, more guides. There's a lot of people hungry for changing themselves or transforming or experiencing a better life and hearing about meditation, but feeling confused by all the information that's out there. And so I think the world can only use more people that are having these conversations and not taking a one-size-fits-all approach, but making it personalized for people.
Yeah, totally. And I love the, the continuous learning attitude that we all need. And I taught in higher education for 10 years, and I realized very quickly that everyone learns differently. and struggling with that early on, because I wanted everyone to get that personalized attention. And so moving into the kind of the mindfulness realm, it's like everyone has not only their own kind of needs, but they change over time.
Yeah.
And so you could be totally into one technique for a while, and then it kind of, I don't know, it stutters or fades, or you become stagnant, and then what do you do? And so it's great to be able to.
Have you noticed that in yourself?
Oh yeah. I've gone through so many different over time, and even just, listening to other teachers and speakers, and I get into, Abraham Hicks for a while.
Yeah.
All into Eckhart.
I love some Abraham Hicks.
That's a favorite to come back to always. You kind of get saturated.
Move into the vortex.
Yes, exactly. And you can tell, for example, using Esther Hicks as an example, she always comes up with a new twist, a new angle, a new spin, so they don't stay stagnant either, the ones that continue to evolve themselves. So
I think we have the desire to grow as human beings and not stay. We're not robots, We're always developing and growing and folding into who we're becoming. And something that works for us in a particular point in our life, because maybe we came to meditation for healing, or needing some peace at that moment. Once we've really cultivated that, a deep connection to being able to cultivate that within ourselves, or to go through that healing process. Now, where are we? That technique that worked for us then in that period of time may not feel so relevant anymore, and we sort of lose the desire to be with it because it's served its purpose. And now it's time to explore something new and to check in deeply with ourselves. Where am I at now? What am I needing now to thrive? Might be more about expansion than healing. And so we go through different phases. And so I think that's why it's always good to learn a few different styles and have a few different techniques in your tool belt that you can work with, and then be able to go, there's no one way, right or wrong way to be doing this. And always wondering, who said that I have to stick with one thing forever? Who said, why would I wear the same outfit every day forever, or eat the same food forever? It's just silly to think that way. So why would I think that way about meditation? And I like to think of it like, I know what I want to wear in the morning, what colors I'm feeling, I don't know, tickled by wearing, or what food I feel like I'm currently desiring, what music I feel in the mood to listen to. And I can check in with myself each day in meditation and go, what do I need right now? And go to that. Yeah. So I appreciate that you've noticed that. And I've noticed that too, feeling stagnant at times and going, maybe this is the time to change it up and try something different, or switch the routine a little bit and make it invigorating for me.
Yeah. And I also find that that's less likely to happen the more intentional. You mentioned, really picking the clothes that resonate for that particular day, that morning.
Yeah.
And maybe even change them for the afternoon. It does, and just really live in alignment with what the frequency is. And the more we do that, the more just we think less about what are we supposed to be doing and what people think of us, and the shoulds and the coulds and the what ifs, and more we just become more this contained, alive, with your own blueprint and unfolding creature. So I had a question. So you mentioned the world needs more teachers. Now, often as a teacher, but part of the struggle is, well, where do the students come from, and how to attract those? And in your experience, what has really pulled people towards you? Is it something you intentionally did, or just being who you are and focusing on?
Yeah, I think for me, my experience was I just became very enthusiastic about sharing with people what was helping me, and I came to meditation because I went through a really, really difficult period of my life. In fact, like my entire life up to was, if you could argue, was a difficult period of my life. And I had anxiety disorder, and I was having panic attacks, and I was going through a really existential crisis of who am I and what am I here for, and not feeling aligned with the life that I had created and the career that I was in and the people that I was around and what I was doing. And so meditation really gave me that space to find to really connect with myself and my deep desires and what was calling me, and to move through and process and heal my nervous system and give me that space. And so out of just sheer delight about how I was feeling and about the new insights I was getting, I shared it with people. And then people it sort of found its way to me in a sense. Like I didn't start out necessarily knowing who my people were. And I have talked with various coaches over the years now to understand like that might have been a good exercise for me back then, to really identify like who are the people that I want to serve. Because no matter what it is that we do in our life, whether we're creating a product or we're offering a service of some sort, or it's teaching meditation, or it's being a yoga instructor, like whatever, there's the very fundamental question is, who are the people that I care for? And it might be everybody. You might say, I care for everybody, right? Okay, that might be true. But we can start to whittle it down more specifically, like who on a daily basis do I want to be spending the time with and being around? And some people are really clear about that. They're like, I love working with children. I love working with the elderly. I love working with, military vets, or people who remind me of myself 10 years ago, that resonate with my similarities. And that's often the case, is that we find people who are just, maybe a few steps behind in a similar journey that we are, that we can work with and advise. And that was sort of the case for me. I look at my trainings and I find oftentimes that people come that remind me of me in some way, or resonate with my story, because maybe they've worked in corporate world too, and they've experienced burnout and anxiety. And because I've been through that process and I've been in those trenches, they resonate with me and where I'm at now, and find inspiration that way. And so it's a very natural fit for me to work with people but it doesn't mean that I can't work with anybody. Yeah. It's just that like when I'm clear about like, oh, those are the people that I'm serving, then it starts to steer you in the direction of what do those people need, and what are they struggling with, and what are their hopes and dreams and aspirations and desires, and what keeps them up at night, and what are these are the questions. Like I think before anything, we have to start from a place of care to help people. And what really makes a good teacher is someone who has their own practice, continues to be a student and learn, has good teachers, and has care to help people. And I think those are really the only like big, real necessaries. But it's like always coming back to that care piece instead of thinking like, I'm going to go out there and become the next, famous superstar of meditation or next famous, teacher. And it's like, well, that's not really the best motivation, right? Like, where's the care in that? That might be stemming, sometimes I think we can go in directions that stem from places of fear or lack or feeling inadequate or needing validation. But when we get past ourselves and we move ourselves out of the way and we just go, let me focus on the people that I'm serving, then it starts to, those situations, those people, those opportunities start to unfold more naturally and become more clear to us because we have our eyes on the right goal.
Yeah. And I've examined that in my book a lot on the challenges, why are they there and why do we have to struggle? You mentioned some of your personal struggles. And what I found was that ultimately to get to that point of wanting and being ready to be of service, like you mentioned, we have to go through our own stuff. And so it's the challenges that we so resist, oddly enough, that turn into our calling in many ways. It's the things that then we can really communicate from that place of having really lived it and experienced it. It's the authenticity that comes across when people listen and work with us. And so without those challenges, we wouldn't be who we are, and we couldn't teach the way we teach from that place of knowing. So it has to happen. So, with a little perspective, we can, when we're going through tough times, we can maybe tell ourselves that this is happening for a reason. The reason is to ultimately come out of it, come through it, heal, and then be able to help others heal. And if we didn't go through the healing process ourselves, it would be hard pressed to tell anybody to do anything.
Yeah.
So that's really beautiful and purposeful. Now, you mentioned the everyone studies and learns differently, and there's so much need for meditation. Why isn't there more of it in the world? Because it's been around, it's been a while now that there's awareness. I speak at conventions in Middle America, and everyone's heard of meditations. Everyone's tried it for a little bit. But why hasn't it taken hold more?
Yeah, this is a great question to have. And I love that it's rooted in the care about people too. And I suppose I can only give an opinion on it, that I do feel that there's a lot of access now available. Like we have meditation apps. I mean, the app that I teach on is free for an entire year. It really makes it a lot more accessible to people. Obviously, they have to have a phone. So there's a certain access level that might not be accessible to everyone. But I know in a lot of places in the world, there are not, there's a lot of out there, I think, that is English speaking, and it might not be accessible to people who English is a second language to them. I think there's more and more starting to become teachers who maybe speak Spanish or Russian or other languages, but it's just starting to reach these areas. And so I think we're just at the beginning of a tipping point there where we're going to start seeing more and more people skillfully guiding in multiple different languages. So I think that that's one barrier that has been out there, because sort of similar to yoga, it was obviously stemming from India and came over to the States. If you follow the history of yoga expansion throughout the world, it landed in Los Angeles and through celebrities and whatnot back, I think, in the 1920s, and then it just continued to evolve from there and then spread to places like London and New York and San Francisco, major cities around the world. I think Australia most recently is going through their big yoga revolution. And so this has been happening really more mainstream, I'd say, the last 20, 30 years. I mean, even 30 years ago, yoga was a bit of a fringe thing to be doing, right? Like you would think of yoga, you think some weird hippie granola person, right? You're like, oh, yoga, stretching, what is that? Like, are you praying with mala beads to some god? And then like, it was a lot more traditional then too. So yes, if a yoga environment 30 years ago would have looked very different than the yoga that we see today, which has been much more commodified to, reach the masses. And you might have hip hop yoga, yoga, whatever. There's every kind of yoga. There's pirate yoga. There's goat yoga. So we see this spread of yoga, and I think meditation's about 20, 30 years behind. And it's just, now it's having its day. Even 10 years ago, to meet someone that was a meditation teacher was a little bit like odd. When I started teaching meditation, I only knew very few meditation teachers because I lived in Los Angeles, in the central of like where this would stem from, just sort of similar to yoga, and worked at the first meditation studio in the United States. And so was able to see, like, now they're popping up all over the place in the last, I'd say, few years. Even when I came to Bali 7 years ago, they didn't really have enough need for it then at the studio I'm at now. They were like, well, we have one meditation teacher, but we don't really need more because there's not a big need for meditation right now. People aren't asking for it. But within 2 years, that changed very quickly. And now there's tons of meditation classes on the schedule. So we just see how this tipping point is happening. And it's starting to sort of spread out into the world now. So I think although there's not a lot of teachers and not a lot of trainings, we're starting to see this shift in this current moment. And that's really exciting to me because there's billions of people on this planet that could use it. And even if there's 1,000 teachers in every, city, this still wouldn't be enough to reach everyone, which is why we have things like apps but there's only so far, I believe, that you can go with the app when someone wants to reach out and connect with a human being and ask deeper questions and have it more personalized to them and get specific guidance for their situation. Just like anything, just like you'd find in like fitness, you can do fitness or do yoga online, or you can but it might not have the same experience as being in a classroom environment or working one-on-one with a teacher who can say, actually, you need to rotate your shoulder this way, because if you keep doing that, you're going to have some injuries 1,000 chaturangas later. So, working with a meditation teacher is nice in that we can guide people in ways that avoid those sort of internal injuries of practicing something that brings them to being at war with themselves or isn't helpful. And that's why I say we need more meditation teachers, even though meditation is actually truly accessible in a way that you can pick up an app and listen to a guided meditation. That is beautiful, and it's opening up so many doors to people. But I still believe that at some point in their journey, people are going to hit those challenges and go, maybe I'm feeling bored with it, or I've fallen off the wagon, or wow, I'm really de-stressing lots of stuff right now and it's really uncomfortable. And, at first it felt blissful to sit in meditation. Now it feels like agony and I feel more anxious and I don't know why. And then they just stop. Where if they worked with a teacher, they'd know, like, you're in the thick of the deep stressing process. You're actually in the healing process of releasing years of tension, maybe trauma and stress that you've been holding on to. And that is going to be uncomfortable. And so you got to stick through those difficult times when, that peak of motivation drops off, or when the old wounds start to surface that need healing and processing, people let it go. Whereas if they had someone they could reach out to let them know, like, stick with it, you're on the right path, keep going, and you're going to see the other side of this. That's what I think the world needs more of.
Yeah. It's such an elaborate answer as well, because it touches on so many points. Now, you mentioned falling off the wagon, for example. That's something, even just going to the gym or other routines that we try to establish, specifically meditation. What's some tips, tricks that you have in your toolbox to help people kind of come back from that? It's just, the app too. I often wonder that can satisfy certain surface needs, but it doesn't really change. It's more jamming it into the existing structure of one's busy life. And so I think a lot of people struggle then with, the true impact of meditation. Does it require more in-person experience? Anyone who's meditated knows that sitting with a group, even in silence, is so much more powerful than just by yourself. And so there is, I think, like you say, a interpersonal component to it, is like the energy in the room. It's a lot easier to stay sitting than when others are around than by yourself. You might just, your mind will take you somewhere and you'll just get up and go do your chores. So when it comes to falling off the wagon or not feeling like it's really working for you, what do you usually recommend?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's happened to me multiple times. And in that case, there's a few things that I recommend. And first is like set just small, achievable goals. Like you really don't need to be meditating every day for hours on end. Some people do. And that's amazing. I mean, I definitely know people who are like every day, 2 hours a day, I'm in my meditation practice. Beautiful. My hat goes off to you. And that's not doable for everyone. Even for me, I have a 3-year-old and I have a business and I have, a lot of demands of my attention every day. And so for me to carve out 2 hours would mean it would come out of my sleep. And that's so precious to me right now. So I have to make choices, right? And for me, since becoming a parent, I have to go, okay, maybe my routine needs to shift a little bit and I can do more bite-sized chunks periodically throughout the day versus having a long sit. Or I need to shift that and find an earlier time to do it before my son wakes up, etc. So having like small achievable goals, that's why we have 3-minute meditations in the app, because sometimes that's all people have is 3 or 5 minutes at a time. But not to believe that there's, some people think, oh, it's only effective if I do 20 minutes. Well, that's not true. We even see it in lab research that within 3 minutes, a big shift can take place. So in our nervous systems, in our mood, in our mindset. So don't discount what the power of 3 minutes can do. So start off small and set a timer. Pair it with activities that you're already regularly doing. So, that might be going for a walk with your dogs or exercise. What is it that you do daily in your routine that you could take a moment to sit afterwards or stand or just go for a walk and be present and integrate it into your daily routine in some way? And again, like sometimes that's being active. A lot of people find active meditations to be really helpful in a way that they can integrate it into their life through walking or through dancing or through some sort of fitness routine. And so keeping an open mind about that. And then also finding like a accountability partner. Maybe you don't have access to a meditation or yoga studio nearby where you can sit with a group of people. Maybe you create one yourself. Or you just find a friend or a partner, someone who can be an accountability partner who might actually do it with you, and or just be aware that this is a goal you're setting for yourself and check in with you and see how's it going. And so you can map that, see that progress forward, because I think we need that sometimes. We need the accountability of other people that we share it with. And even just if you don't have that person, you just write down on a piece of paper, like a journal of reflection of like the benefits that you're experiencing, what you're encountering, what's going on for you with the practice, is going to help reinforce the why behind what you're doing in those moments when you don't feel, feel lazy, or you really don't want to sit with yourself because there's a deep fear about like what might show up that I don't want to face. I'd rather just put on Netflix or sit and scroll social media for an hour. But what if we just tied it with, okay, I'll give myself 15 minutes of social media and I'm going to meditate for 3 minutes first, or I'm going to follow it up with 3 minutes of meditation afterwards. We just tacked it on to something that we're already doing. And that makes it doable.
Yeah. And I like that juxtaposition. If you're actually in stillness for 3 minutes and then you switch to social media, you may actually feel the contrast more.
Yeah. Or you may need to de-stress from that and sit for 3 minutes afterwards. Maybe you sandwich it.
Yes.
Start with 3 minutes, social media for 15, and end with 3 minutes of meditation. Let me let that all go.
Exactly. That's fantastic. Now you mentioned, having to sit with feelings and maybe discomfort or trauma coming up.
Yeah.
That's what actually prevents a lot of people from sitting and practicing and getting into meditation, is they're just afraid of feeling their feelings.
Yeah.
In essence, we're suggesting by saying, learn to meditate, to do the thing that you're afraid of doing, which is distracting yourself from those tough feelings. What would you say to people like that?
Well, I think the fear is not knowing what to do about it. Right? And it comes up, being afraid of being swallowed up by it completely, wallowing in our grief or our sadness or our anger or amplifying it in some way. I think that's the fear, is that if I'm with it and I face it, it's going to destroy me. It's going to swallow me whole and I won't get away from it. And that's actually just not true. If we can follow a certain mindset in meditation, which is, I'm going to not fight those things, but I'm also not going to identify as being those things. So there's a distinction that we go into with meditation. So we're not just letting it completely consume us so that we have no separation from it, but we engage with what's there in a compassionate and welcoming way to say, hey, maybe these emotions that I'm feeling are just a messenger. And we learn anger might just be a messenger that there's a need unmet. And I can inquire into, what is that need? What do I need? Or a boundary that's been crossed, and I can inquire into, how can I, where do I need to establish stronger boundaries in my life? Where I've been crossed in some way that's uncomfortable, and I can step into that knowing of where I can establish stronger boundaries. So sometimes it propels us towards the action to actually face those emotions. And sadness oftentimes is overlying a deep well of love underneath. Same with grief. We can be with our grief about something and realize that grief stems from this deep well of love underneath it, and access that love by just moving through the grief and allowing it the space. So I think that's where the teachings come in, is how do I be skilled at welcoming what's here, not having to identify with it so much that I'm completely absorbed by it, but I'm engaged with it in such a way that I see it as a sensation that's moving through. I see it as an emotion that's moving through. I see it as a thought that's moving through, versus being so in it that I'm not even aware that I'm thinking, that I'm not even aware what I'm feeling. I'm just pure taken by emotion. We've all been there. Yes. In the heat of a moment, or in a stressful thought, a worrisome thought, where we're like completely enraptured and captured by it. But in meditation, we sort of see like, oh, there goes my mind worrying. Oh, there goes my mind judging myself. Oh, there goes my mind, projecting into the future about a fantasy that I want to happen. And it's like, we don't see any of them as good or bad or right or wrong, but necessarily like, oh, this is just what's happening right now. And we get a little bit of a separation enough to recognize that, like, I'm something more than this thought. I'm just witnessing it, and I can step back and have some relief from that, to go, I can welcome everything to pass through, and I can offer compassion to the parts of myself that are showing up and need to vent, or need to be held, or need a little hug or some tenderness, and be that loving parent to myself that I need in this moment, to whatever part of me is showing up. And so we take that kind of seat of this almost sort of loving parent or loving space holder. Yeah. And instead of being in the thing, we're here holding the thing. with love and welcoming our breath to meet it and letting it go again and again as often as we need to. It might show up many, many times. And then going, where do I want to bring my attention to? How do I want to feel? Maybe that's a sound that I love to be immersed by, or my breath that feels so good. Or maybe it's a visualization of a beautiful memory, and I can rest with that for some time. And then that's the nurturing that I need to refill my cup, to regain all the energy that I need to take on the day, because I'm giving to myself something that I really needed. It's like a little mini vacation. But in that process of that mini vacation, I also have to hold the space for the things that are going to come up and want to be released. Yeah. So that's long-winded answer.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. And you mentioned love and self-care and nurturing. So, I mean, maybe a way to look at meditation and to promote it is it's an act of self-love.
I believe so. Yeah. Deep down, I think that I always thought it was meditation. It was like this thing that I'm doing to achieve enlightenment or whatever. But actually, it was an act of self-love to be with myself and to give myself what I truly needed.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
All right. So then you mentioned like learning to disidentify from our thoughts, not getting so pulled into our emotions. So if we're, if we can observe our thoughts, then we're clearly not our thoughts. If we can learn to be with our feelings and hold space for our feelings, well, then we're not our feelings. Then what are we?
That's the ultimate question. Who am I? What am I? And I don't think that we have the language to be able to describe it. I think we're limited by language. I think we're limited by these words coming out of our mouth to describe something beyond what's possible to describe through language alone. And we try really hard to, though. We're always trying to. Like, we come up with all these different, discourses and theories and whatnot, and we can follow them and then find that at the end of the day, we're all just trying to describe something that I think is truly indescribable. And so I don't pretend to have the answer to that. But when I feel into it for myself, it's something along the lines of, for lack of a better word, I talk about energy a lot because it's, I feel myself as a presence, as a being, as an aliveness, as this sort of source of all these different senses, picking up on all the, sound, smells, taste, hearing, gravity, hungry, thirsty, tired, like all these different inputs, these sensory inputs coming at me all at once. And it's just like this presence that's processing all this waves of things. And then sometimes I can get beyond that and just feel like this sort of peace underneath it all, because all that stuff's just coming and going. And I sort of fall back under the surface and I'm sort of looking up like you're looking up from deep down in the ocean, looking up at the surface and all the waves and all the boats and all the activity that's happening above, but from this like very peaceful place deep down, recognizing, oh, I'm this whole ocean, but I only before was identifying with these thoughts and these waves, these sensations, but actually I'm the thing that's here underneath it all. I get that feeling sometimes, and it's just the analogy, because there's lack of a better way to describe it. But yeah, I really feel personally, my belief is that we are an aliveness energy, or you might say consciousness, that is moving through everything, and we can tune into that within ourselves and feel connected to others and to all of life and to all of nature when we really, really get still with it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And, words ultimately are just pointers and approximations. So, and there's something to be said to just be comfortable with not knowing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Leah.
Yeah.
That was a fantastic chat that we had, and I hope we can do it again one day.
Yeah, it's nice.
Anyone who's listening, this was the latest episode of the Inner Power Podcast. Always thank you for joining. Please be sure to like and apply some 5-star ratings if you feel like it. And you can always find the latest information on our website, cirak.com, Cirak.com. And until next time, be well.